Unmuted.
Hi everyone, this is Jennifer Havens with Qualtrax. Welcome to our ASCLD Lab Accreditation Automation webinar. We hope you'll find this informative and learn more about where we are together on the process. Ken Vaughn, our product manager, is going to walk you through where we are right now with the project and give you some updates on the features and functionality. If you have questions at any time during the webinar, please type them in the question panel and we'll get to them as soon as possible. Ken?
Thanks, Jennifer. Welcome, everyone. If you're new to our webinar series and the content I'm going to go over here, thank you for joining. I appreciate your time. I'm sure for most of you, this is the final thing for your day before enjoying a great weekend, so really do appreciate everyone's time and listening to what we're doing for ASCLD Lab to really make the assessment process better for all parties involved. So again, the topic today is what we call the ASCLD Lab Accreditation Automation Portal. It's a mouthful, but hopefully as I go through the content here to explain to everyone what we're doing, it's actually a simple, straightforward concept that we're trying to bring about. As Jennifer mentioned, I'm going to speak. Everyone's on mute for about 30 to 35 minutes here. I'll keep it under that, hopefully. And then towards the end, we'll turn it over for questions. So again, if you do have anything that you'd like to ask us, please use the little question box in the GoToMeeting control, and we will start with those at the end, and then I'll open it up and unmute everyone for a general conversation for the latter half of the hour. So let's see, get going here. Briefly, what I'm going to cover, just talk a little bit about the purpose of this project. If you're not very familiar with it or you've not joined our previous webinars, I think a good overview of why we're doing this with ASCLD Lab is important. Cover the nuts and bolts of how we are projecting it will work, the things we're developing to make that happen, some timelines around when you can expect to see some progress, and then I'm going to conclude with some notes on why we think it's an advantage to be a Qualtrax customer in this scenario, and I'll speak more on that in a second. But again, finally, some questions at the end. So let me move really quickly on to purpose. For ASCLD Lab, they took a look at the accreditation process, what their customers, you all as labs, go through every year, whether it's a full assessment or a surveillance period, all the inputs and outputs of applying for the accreditation, going through the visits and the back and forth and so on, and really felt there were some areas that needed some improvement, some efficiency gains. And so we have partnered with them to really bring about technology to help solve some of those slownesses, some of the back and forth that may take a while, but really use technology and primarily the Qualtrax product to drive speed and consistency throughout every step of each one of those assessments. So as you work with them from year to year, you'll be using a Qualtrax product and a portal to really hopefully get a faster turnaround on your assessment, a much more seamless and easier set of steps to walk through, really provide some clarity that may be missing in certain steps along the way. And again, this goes for the lab side, but really as well the ASCLD Lab personnel side. So if you're a lead assessor, but all the way through to joining the assessment team as a technical assessor, you'll be using this interface to make it a much more simpler, straightforward, and clean process. So that's the purpose ASCLD Lab has set out for, working with us to provide you all with the portal. Again, the intent is to really make the assessment process much better and more user-friendly for their customers. And we feel very good about what we'll deliver over the next year to make that happen. So before I jump into how this will work, which is the slide you're seeing here, I do want to state a couple things. With that purpose in mind, of course, ASCLD Lab's customers are hundreds of different labs in different states of accreditation history. Maybe you've not been accredited before, or your old hat having gone through several assessments. It's also true that all of their customers are diverse in terms of what technology they already have on hand. Many labs, of course, are still paper-based with a lot of their processes and record keeping. Many also have quality management systems, some of which have Qualtrax. This tool that I'm going to walk through today and the technology we're going to be delivering is intended to be really agnostic to where you are technology-wise, where you are with the quality management system. And I want to be clear, I'm really not, my intent here is not to present Qualtrax from a sales perspective. My goal with this webinar is to present what we're doing for ASCLD Lab as their technology partner, regardless of where you are on the technology spectrum, regardless of whether you're a Qualtrax user or not. The goals and the deliverables of this project are going to meet the needs of every one of the labs that they work with. Of course, we would love for you to come on board and be a Qualtrax user, but that is not the intent of this presentation, and that's not really the intent of their project either. It's not to favor a vendor over another. So I think that's important that everyone hears and understands. That's certainly the approach we're taking from a development side. But again, at the end of this presentation, I do want to talk about some things that through having a Qualtrax system will give you a leg up in terms of the prep needed for the application process, but that may be no different than what you're getting through other systems as well. So I'll come back around to that. So how does this work? And if you've been on some previous webinars in this topic or you've attended our user conference, you may have heard some of this before, so I apologize if it's repetitive, but sometimes that's the best way to get the message across. So this will work driven from ASCLD Lab's website. So this, what you're looking at here is ascldlab.org. There's going to be a sign-up page we'll build into this website where a lab will basically provide some cursory input about what their sort of breakdown is in terms of the disciplines, some contact information, but basically initiate the process of an accreditation from the website. Now, you may have already been through several assessments with ASCLD Lab. There will be inputs. You won't necessarily have to enter all this info in before if you've already been through a process with them. But if you're a new customer primarily to ASCLD Lab or new to the accreditations, the website's where it will be triggered from. So again, if you're a lab director or you're beginning this process, you're going to start from their website, but that's really the extent of the website that you're used to with ASCLD Lab. From that point forward, a Qualtrax system and the technologies behind it will be leveraged. And again, we're going to be using some of the core modules and functionality that's already in Qualtrax to make this happen. That's how we felt like we could bring this about sooner than later. We already do a good portion of what ASCLD Lab's asking for in our core product today. So we're going to switch the sort of perspective and the interface you're working from their website to a cloud portal, and that's the key to what we're delivering here is an online interface that everyone will be working from. So it'll be a cloud system which ASCLD Labs got today that we'll be leveraging for our workflow process automation to guide the accreditation through the 100+ steps that it needs to go to. And then we're going to be using our core document control module to ensure that the record keeping that's necessary, particularly around the conformance file, is stored appropriately and used at each step of the way. And of course, I'll get into all this in a bit. But the cool thing here is whether you're the lab director or you're on the lab side entirely, you have a common interface that's shared with the ASCLD Lab side of the business as well. So whether you're a lead assessor again or you're on the technical assessment team, you're all looking at and working through a common interface and set of steps and inputs and outputs. So again, that's kind of the point of this project is to use technology to make things a little quicker so you're not having to maybe mail some of this information, but also drive a more consistent set of inputs and outputs at every step of the way. And those steps are the same for every assessment as well. So those are all benefits that we're bringing by having a regimented workflow process to guide the assessments. So again, there's a common interface that'll take over here. It's a Qualtrax system hosted on the cloud. And again, once a workflow is initiated, part of that process is going to be a confirmation code that all ASCLD Lab labs will give them to indicate that this is a legitimate request and it's not some kind of spam coming off the internet. And there'll be a lot more kind of overview on this when we get closer to releasing this. But ultimately, ASCLD Lab will be presented with a request from the web saying, hey, I'd like to begin the accreditation. There will be a confirmation code letting them know which lab it is, and they'll approve it. Again, as you can see, it's using Qualtrax workflows right out of the gate. Once that approval happens, we're going to kick off some automation, and this is where some of the custom development comes in that we're working on right now, which builds upon the core modules of Qualtrax. So here's where some of the unique functionality is that we're going to make available in this project. So as soon as ASCLD Lab approves the workflow or the request for sign up, we're going to automatically create a user in the portal for the lab who's requesting the sign up, and then a group which will house members beyond maybe just that single user for that lab. And so really the infrastructure that's required for someone to log into the portal is automatically created for that lab. That's going to then be emailed back to you as the requester, as the lab requester. You'll get basically your login credentials, a link to the website, and then your authentication credentials to get in and start working with the portal. Our goal is to have this actually be part of what every lab can do day one. We would love for every lab to log in, get comfortable with the portal. We're going to have some things you can poke around with and really start using immediately, even if your assessment's not coming up for another year, several months, or even multiple years away. You will have access to get in and start getting comfortable with the technology and the interfaces. And hopefully that's not going to be too hard, because we want to make it as intuitive as possible. So this is one of those aspects that hopefully makes it easier. Once you have been given the login credentials and you log in, we're developing some custom dashboards into the product and really into the overall process that will guide you as a user through the steps that you need to go through. This kind of builds on what's there today and simplifies things in a way that some of our customers may not be familiar with. But again, really consolidating what you see and deal with as a user of this portal to only the things you really care about and need to see. And this is where we go beyond really the Qualtrax product, because we don't want to show you some of the other things that ASCLD Lab's using Qualtrax for, so we're going to hide a lot of that, but really provide some dashboards that simplify what you're seeing, show you clearly in the assessment steps where you are, and then give you some instructions and some very big, bold buttons to really interact with it. So, again, our goal is to make this very user-friendly and very intuitive to all the types of users who will be working with this product. And then, again, when you sign up initially, we're going to give you a sort of orientation workflow that just lets you get familiar with how the portal works, how to work with workflows, and work with the product. There's going to be some instructions. One of the initial things ASCLD Lab would like to let you have available initially is the ability to start tracking the professional staff that are subject to proficiency testing. So anyone, in other words, that you need to track or create a statement of qualification for, you'll have the ability to start uploading those records and tracking those personnel in the portal. And you don't have to do this necessarily, but the work you do early here will absolutely be leveraged and basically copied over into the assessment when you go apply for the accreditation. So you're not going to have to duplicate work, and this is really a mechanism to get you comfortable with how to create SOQs, how to get them in the portal, really see the scope of what an assessment may cover, and use the portal to kind of track that, because again, you may have some needs for SOQs outside of the accreditation process, so this can, as a way to start using it a little early if need be. And really, again, what I'm presenting here is some of the initial orientation, some of the just getting comfortable and familiar with how this will work, but really allowing you to start doing work early if need be, so you're not trying to rush at the end, or you're not trying to put it all together during one time frame. Finally, one of the extra things you can do here during the orientation is start building the conformance file. So we understand, and I think everyone here would probably agree, that the conformance file creation is one of the, probably the largest aspect of submitting the application. And for many, that can take weeks or months even of work to just fill out those fields about what documentation you have for each standard. So we want to give you access to really working with the portal to build that from day one. Again, even if you're not going to use it for the application for several months, you can start getting it updated and grooming it, so to speak, so that when you're ready, it's available as well, and you can work with it initially. So this screenshot you're seeing is just some instructions about how to work with it that are part of this orientation setup. It's also going to ask you some questions around the scope of the accreditation you're going to be seeking. So whether you're testing lab, whether you're calibration, whether you do both, and then of course if you use the FBI QAS standards, what is the scope that you'll be audited to? Those decisions there will dictate some of the secondary automation that will occur after this point. So once you've declared that information and you're ready to start getting yourself familiar with the conformance file, we're going to kick off some more automation. And so specifically, we're going to build out a folder structure in the portal that will really mirror the conformance files themselves. And I'll kind of explain this in a second, but as you can see in the screenshot, let's say we're a fictional Alabama crime lab. It will know who we are based on that initial sign-up information. It'll create a high-level folder for you as a lab. Of course, there'll be hundreds of these for all the different labs ASCLD Lab works with, but you'll only see and get access to your own documentation. So you'll get a folder for that. You'll get a copy of the conformance file template, which you'll interact with and which some automation will be built around, which is one of the most exciting parts of this. And then there will also be subfolders underneath for the standard frameworks you've selected in that step I just showed you. And so once you've expand some of these folders to kind of take a look, you can see there are high-level folders, as you can see, 4.0 for management requirements, 4.1 for organization, and then underneath those there are subfolders for the two areas in the conformance file it ever asks you to make hyperlinks to records and documents. So in other words, we're going to give you folders for you to be providing documentation just as it is today in the conformance file. So it's a one-to-one what you're seeing in the portal as it is in the conformance file. And if you kind of have been through this before, when you submit the conformance file, you're asked to submit not just a Word document that says here are the documents that our lab uses to track this compliance, but you're also asked to submit those records and documents as well. All the files that go with them are asked to be mailed and sent. So the portal is going to be an interface where you're really going to upload those rather than putting them on some other media to give it to ASCLD Lab. And this is one of the big advantages, the technology boost, so to speak. So again, this is kind of what I just said here. Here's a look at the high-level conformance file that you'll have access to. And if you're used to that today, usually you're putting those on CDs or thumb drives, but ultimately you're mailing that to ASCLD Lab in the past. This is what we're looking to replace. So there's not that kind of overhead, at least in terms of the logistics of getting it done, but the time savings we're going to be delivering through just uploading them on the fly should really help make your life easier. And one of the really nice things here too is you're not having to do this all at once. So from day one when the portal is available, you can get in, start working with the conformance file, and really however long you deem you have to take to get this ready. So you're not having to do it all at once. You can come back just like logging in and out of any website. You can come back at any point and keep working with it. So some of the great things that we've been able to do with the development we've done this year to make this even better, if you're familiar with Qualtrax, you may notice that the folders you're looking at here, it's a facelift from what we have had in previous releases. So we're making them bolder, a little bit bigger, a little more accessible to a variety of different users who are may or may not be tech savvy. But we've also added the ability to drag and drop into our tree. So that's what you'll be asked to do here as a user of the portal. You just drag and drop the files that you need to show compliance to each one of these requirements. And again, this really mirrors what you're doing in the conformance file. So you're just going folder to folder and saying, here are the records, here are the procedures, the policies, the different forms that we use that we would otherwise link in the conformance file. You're giving them to the portal by dragging and dropping. And again, whatever types of documents those are, we don't care what the file format is. You know, PDFs, Word, Excel, however you would otherwise be hyperlinking and putting on a CD, you can upload here. And this is where I think the biggest, most exciting part of what we're doing for ASCLD Lab lives. Once you've done that, once you've given it, let's say, 5 documents for a given standard, we're going to kick in some automation, and what it'll do is scan those items for bookmarks. It'll scan, but basically, so it'll scan them for bookmarks and any other things that we may need to hyperlink to a specific location. But it will go to that version of the conformance file that it's given you, that one that it creates a copy of right in the top of your tree, and it'll take these placeholders you can see here. We have little placeholders for the files you've uploaded, and it'll automatically create the hyperlinks to the file as a whole, or if you specify a specific bookmark, it'll create a hyperlink right to the specific bookmark that you want it to go to. If you've been through this before, this is just how you have to build a conformance file today. So this should look and feel not much different than what you're used to in terms of the outcome, what the completed conformance file looks like. It's very similar. And of course, you're using your quality manual in a lot of this all over the place. That's linked to many of the same standards. We're not going to ask you to upload that 50 times. You just do it once, and you tell us in each location where you want the link to be made to if you have multiple bookmarks in that document. So again, we're going to ask you to go folder by folder or standard by standard, just like you would if you were looking at the Word document for the conformance file, and give it the files. That will automatically go into your version of the conformance file in the portal and insert links to those items, which can be bookmark specific. And then you're free, if you need, through some other enhancements we've just developed, to check out the conformance file and make changes. And the enhancement you're seeing here is just we've overhauled the look and feel of the check-in, check-out to make it as simple and clear and straightforward as possible. So just a big bold button of checkout. You get the conformance file. You can make the changes. You can check it back in if you need to make any notes or manual edits that complement what the automation is already doing to it. So you can fully work with the conformance file at any step of the process, and especially during the application process. But there is a lot of automation to hopefully make this your life a little easier here and make this take less time. So, as I mentioned earlier, we were going to be using Qualtrax workflow to guide you and the assessment team through the necessary steps. And that doesn't just entail the initial application, and that doesn't just entail the conformance file building. Once you've done that, of course, there's a gap analysis step that needs to occur. There's the on-site assessment, and there's several steps after that, ultimately to final accreditation. So whether you're approved or not, it's going to guide you through each one of those. So you'll be kind of getting notified through automatic emails when it's necessary for you to interact with the portal because the assessment team's completed something, or you need to get alerted that you need to read something, or there's an action to take. In other words, you'll have a dashboard indicating what that action needs to be, but ultimately it should speed up the time it needed for an assessment, and then again bring some consistency to the inputs and outputs along the way. Some of the other advantages by having this electronic now and in a portal are that over a period of time you can see the record of your assessment. So if you want to come and look through a search or a report, you can view what your lab has done previously at each step of the way. And this is functionality that's inherent in Qualtrax today. You can look at any previous workflow, see all the data that was filled out before if need be, look at some of the attachments that were made, and go back in time. But this is where it's important to stress, the final step of the accreditation for the full and the surveillance is to automatically delete all of those files that you uploaded to build the conformance file. We do not retain those after the assessment is complete. So that's come up on a few other calls, and it's really critical to remind everyone here we're not storing this indefinitely in the cloud. This is only during the period of time required to facilitate the assessment, at which point it'll be deleted. However, everything else about the workflow and the process of the assessment, like your name, the steps it took, the time frames around each step, and some of the other inputs that are more metadata about the process are retained, and those are the things you can search and look at over time. So the other great advantage here is whether you begin at the full accreditation step, when this portal's ready and that's where you are, you're ready to begin a full accreditation, or you're in year 2 of the surveillance years, you can begin the portal at any point, but the great part is it will automatically trigger the necessary events year over year. So if you're in year 2, the next year when you've completed this year's surveillance, it'll automatically alert you at the appropriate step and time that it's time to begin the next surveillance visit. It'll also automatically alert ASCLD Lab of that information, and then it can work itself through the necessary workflow for that year. And they're connected, in other words, from year to year. And really, throughout the lifetime of your relationship with ASCLD Lab, you'll be guided through a series of workflows, and you'll have access to this portal, and again, all of the previous year's history if need be. I think that's pretty exciting. I think it makes your life a little easier. You're not having to worry about time frames and deadlines and who owns what aspect. It's all clear and automatically alerting each person at each step of the way. So if you've been on previous calls here or it's been a while since you've checked in with us on where we are, this is part where I kind of update everyone on what we've done thus far and some of the exciting features that we're releasing along the way to make this possible and ultimately address some of the timeline questions. So of course we have a Qualtrax cloud system that is hosting this portal. We have a test version of that, and we also have a production version that will ultimately get the test workflows and technology applied to it when we're done with the beta phase. So we are using that actively to vet the process and the solution as we're building it, and that includes ASCLD lab staff as well as some customers. We recently built the technology that allows you to hyperlink to bookmarks. So before, that was something we had to develop really to facilitate a Qualtrax product. Now the PDFs that the Qualtrax system will generate will allow you to link directly to bookmarks, and there's some great how-to on our website for this. And this is technology that will automatically get applied if you don't have Qualtrax, so I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with that. It is technology, however, the portal will be leveraging to make that conformance file building a much simpler process. We also then did some back-end work to delay some of the massive load of PDF requests that this portal will bring about to the ASCLD Labs Qualtrax system. So we sort of offset some of the things that a user may have to wait on to the background so that they're not having to wait and they can move forward and the system is operating efficiently. If you're a Qualtrax customer and you're on this call, those might be exciting and noteworthy details that you'll see as well. And of course, we've developed the drag and drop functionality. We gave our document tree a little bit of a visual facelift, really making it much easier to work with and much prettier. And then again, drag and drop's pretty exciting for us. And this is all, everything I'm going through here are things that we're giving our current customers through iterative releases. So the great part here is as we're building this functionality for the portal specifically, even though that's a custom sort of project, we are giving these advantages to all of our customers as well as we complete them. And then some of the check-in, check-out screens have gotten a big interface, so you'll be working with this as you use the portal. And behind the scenes, we also have finally completed a workflow launcher functionality, which basically indicates if at a given step in a workflow, it needs to kick off one or more other workflows. It can automatically do that through no custom development on our end and automatically port over data from identical fields between those workflows. So, you know, in other words, if one workflow needs to generate 3 consecutive tasks or concurrent tasks, it can create those workflows, have them work their courses together so that they're not having to wait on each other. And that's a key part of how this accreditation process will work, so that as you as a lab participant have a certain step, the assessment team is also working through some concurrent steps they may have to work through as well, and that's all automated. So where we are in terms of timeline, we're wrapping up one last aspect which will complement all those things I just showed you in the next release, and that is really to overhaul the Create Document screen so that as you drag and drop into the portal, it's very clear how to tell it, you know, for these files, here are the bookmarks I want it to link to, but really give an overhaul to the interface we have today, one that's much more user-friendly and intuitive. And then we're right now about halfway through with the automation we need to initialize the folder building and the user group creation and all those things I initially mentioned. That will kind of make the beta phase look and feel closer to what all of the testers will need to kind of project what it'll look like. Which gets me to what we're shooting for this year. The end of this year, we're lining up and projecting that we will have a beta available for not just ASCLD Labs internal staff, the lead assessors, and some chosen technical assessors, but some customers who have volunteered that they'd like to be part of it, which of course we're still open to taking volunteers if you're interested, but ultimately to help walk through the skeleton framework of what we're building and let us know where things need to be enhanced, or this doesn't work, or this works well, and really just give us the feedback we need to make sure that the final version is what everyone likes and appreciates. So beyond that, and I'm mainly speaking to the Qualtrax folks on this call, we are going to continue after this year to make incremental releases which include the functionality that will facilitate the full production version. So we're going to be adding some nice features like default standards per folder, and this is going to be used for the conformance file building and that automation. It's a prerequisite for that, but it's a great thing that will help all Qualtrax customers. Right now it's very, well, it is a manual step to apply a standard to a document, but you can set defaults per folder going forward. So that as you drag and drop into one of those locations, it will know this document needs this particular standard applied to it. We're also going to be defaulting controlled versus uncontrolled documents per folder. how this portal will work is everything is uncontrolled. It doesn't need ASCLD Lab to approve that you've dropped the documents in there, but that's a nice handy thing that all of our customers should benefit by. So as you drag one or multiple docs in, they'll automatically be labeled uncontrolled, meaning they don't need to be approved. They're just going to be documentation that's in the system. So we'll also allow for standards to be applied to uncontrolled docs. And this will be used in some of the technology I'll mention towards the end of this presentation for our Qualtrax customers, custom fields for uncontrolled docs, and this is part of what will be helpful to apply the right standard in the right place in the bookmarking and some of the behind-the-scenes automation. But also ultimately associating standards to the locations or those bookmarks in documents as well. So it's one thing to provide a hyperlink to a bookmark, but to be able to associate a specific standard in the ISO framework to a location in a document. That's an enhancement we're going to be making early in next year that will also play a big part in this, this portal. Finally, once we've gotten all the input from the beta testing and we're really ready to get this close to go live, one final development task we'll be working on is the ability to hide some elements of the Qualtrax interface that ASCLD Lab needs internally for their 17011 compliance and ultimately their own business needs. It's not necessary for the portal. It's not necessary for the personas like the labs that will be in there. So we're going to be building some show hide settings to turn those off. And the cool thing is for our lab customers who have Qualtrax as well, you'll have the ability to use these so that you can get maybe the auditors involved in your system and hide some aspects that you don't need them to interact with. You can get other third parties like vendors or customers involved with your Qualtrax system and really lock down some views to only the documents you need them to see or only the workflows you need them to process. So some real huge breakthroughs, I think, for our Qualtrax customers are coming through this portal. But of course, this is just for the ASCLD Lab portal that I'm showing you here that will really make that look and feel very simple and straightforward in terms of the dashboards you need as a user of the portal. So again, there's a period of beta testing that we're projecting will take into the end of Q1. So from the end of this year into Q1 of 2015, it'll be in a beta period. And really, that's going to be a period of releasing something to the beta testers, some testing, and then, of course, the input based on that. Our development team is going to go back, make some enhancements based on that input, and then a subsequent release. So it's a cycle, a series of cycles up until ASCLD Lab and you as the customers have said we're ready to go live with this, which we're projecting towards the end of Q1 or Q2 of next year. So again, 2015 is when we want the production launch. Depending on the scope of the beta phase, that will be around Q2 of next year or Q1. With that said, as I mentioned earlier, I want to talk about some things that we think make having Qualtrax an advantage in using this portal. But again, what I said earlier is true. You do not have to have Qualtrax to use this portal. It's going to really not care where you're coming from. It's just going to give you some folders to upload the files that you would otherwise be putting on the conformance file and then walking through the workflow steps. However, I want to talk a little bit about what may make that a little bit easier on your end by having a Qualtrax system. So what you're looking at here is a view into a basic document, lab equipment data sheet, an Excel document. It has been associated with a couple standards, as you can see here in the middle of the screenshot. Qualtrax, one of the key components is the ability to tag each individual document with one or more standards that it shows compliance to. And this can cross multiple frameworks. So as you can see, I can tag it with ISO standards. I can also use the QAS standards if need be. So in other words, by using the basic Qualtrax functionality, like tagging it to standards, as you would normally do, as every one of our Qualtrax customers does today, and grooming your documents against those standards to ultimately be able to report and show maybe where gaps are if you're preparing for an internal audit or you have that external audit, you can kind of see your complete coverage to the standards in our system. By doing all that work, we feel like you're pretty much doing all the work that the conformance file is requiring anyway. So what we're going to ask you to do is really import the right set of standards, and this is something we'll help our customers with that align with the conformance file that ASCLD Labs portal will ask for. And what you're seeing here is a screenshot of sort of how we do this through Excel to make sure it's all a one-for-one. But we're going to be releasing next year a standard mapping tool that will let you align. If you already have Qualtrax and you've been doing this for years, the standards you may have today to the new, maybe a slightly altered version that the portal will be asking for. If there is any variance, there most likely will not be, but if there is, you can align them, just sort of align them up, and what it'll do is go into the documents you've tagged your standards with and apply the new framework to the same ones. So it knows now, okay, based on the new framework that the conformance file will need, here are the files that go to each one of those. So standards mapping is something we're going to come out with to make this easier for our Qualtrax customers. The cool thing here with standards mapping is even if you're not using the portal for several years, you'll have the standards mapper, and that'll let you also incorporate very quickly entirely new standards. So if ISO comes out with a new version in 2018, let's say, you can incorporate that quickly and associate it with all your long-standing 2005 associations. So standards mapping will let you align your documentation, and the point of that is going to be you'll have more or less an easy button where it will take the documents in your system and automatically port them into the appropriate folders on the ASCLD Lab portal based on those standard associations. And again, that will automatically fill out the conformance file. So that's the base version of what we want to do, but we're actually going to try and do this a little bit more direct so that in the Qualtrax systems themselves that our labs have, you have the option to turn on the same view that you would otherwise have in the portal, where you can have the folder structure you're seeing on the left here, and you can also have a copy of the conformance file that's automatically being groomed as you maintain your document control system. And those two things are what will port over into the portal at a point in the future when you're ready to submit your application. So you're not having to do it all over again when you use the portal. You've already done it by having a Qualtrax system. So we think that's a major time savings because essentially our customers are doing this already today, and we want to build in some automation to make that visible to them, and then some automation to leverage it and port it into the portal so they're not having to go folder by folder and make the same uploads that they've already handled in their system. So with all that said, hopefully I'm right on time. I think I'm right at it. I'd like to go ahead and turn it over for questions. Let me review if there were any in the comments area. And Jennifer, if you can see any in there, let me know that you'd like to start with.
Okay. I'm just going to start with the first ones that came through. So we have one. So we would upload our statements of qualification directly to ASCLD Labs Qualtrax instance. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, let me scroll up. The go-to window is a little hard to read for some of these questions. So let me restate that for everyone. So we would upload our statements of qualification directly to ASCLD Lab Qualtrax instance. That's correct. That's one of the first things that will be available to any lab, regardless of where they are in the process from day one. You can basically fill out the same Word file, upload it, and then have a unique record for each staff member that you're submitting information around. Again, from day one, but that same work that you do there is what will automatically be used during the accreditation process. You won't have to duplicate it. And ASCLD Labs indicated that that may have some value to you all as customers, regardless of where you fall in that accreditation. It may just be handy to have that available and have a repository for it. So that was one of the first things we wanted to open up. And I'm very happy to talk more on that once we answer some of these other questions, if there are any others. Let me scroll down a bit more and see. So the next question, would we also upload all the supporting documentation for each lab examiner? This is a very detailed question in terms of what ASCLD Labs is asking for. And without having them on the call today, I would want to confirm with them. My understanding of this particular one is that it will mirror what you're asked to do today during the assessment. So I would imagine yes, but I'd have to confirm with them. We're really not changing much of the steps that you're asked to do with them today. We're just providing an electronic interface and some fields to work with to input and output accordingly to mirror the process today. So I would imagine the answer is yes, but I would have to go back and check. I've not asked them that one in some time. So I will certainly find that out, and we can get back to the person who asked that. Let's see the next question. Can more than one file per person be uploaded in the SOQ area? Yes. Right now they're asking for just the SOQ as an input, but we can certainly open that field up to allow for more documentation if need be, and I think that would be a key area during the beta phase to get some input, and absolutely there's no limitation in the product to doing that. It would just be a question of what do you and ASCLD Lab want to have available. So I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that. Next question, will this require all labs to move their policy structure to align with 17025 ISO? You know, that's a tough question for me to answer other than how would an assessment require you to move your policy structure today? A structure is kind of a word. Maybe when we unmute here in a bit, we can talk more about this because I want to make sure I'm answering precisely what you're asking. But this should not force any requirements on a lab other than what's already in place today. And now, if you want to, have a folder structure on SharePoint or on your internal network drive or even in your Qualtrax system that mirrors this, by all means, that may help, but that should still be no different than what you're being required today during the conformance file building that you have to work with. So I apologize if I didn't directly answer that or it was not the right answer to what the specific question was, but we can talk more when I unmute here in a second. So let's see, next question. Will there be different permission levels for users versus user group within the laboratory? Right now, our approach, and this is something that the beta phase I think will bear out well, or maybe we need to make some changes, is there's a singular user tied to the lab, and that's based on the sign-up phase. Now, on demand, ASCLD Lab can add additional users for the lab. However, all the permissions and view access and what you can get to and see are going to be absolutely and tightly limited to only those things that that lab has been working with in the portal. There will never be a case where you can see or even understand that there are other things going on with other labs. So now the question of permissions that a single lab needs when they're working with and dealing with their record keeping, I'd like to understand a little more, because I can imagine maybe certain folks just need to upload, maybe some are allowed to edit the conformance file. I think those are all fantastic questions that we can talk through and absolutely try and vet during the beta phase of this project, because of course you may want only certain folks uploading records and maybe not everyone making changes to the conformance file. At least that one stands out to me. So let's see. Can Qualtrax send alerts to more than one email address within a lab? I think this, just like the other questions, is absolutely something we can do. The technology would not limit that. It would just be a matter of when do we ask for what those email addresses are, and let's make sure we get them documented. I think that's a great question, and I would say yes, that would certainly be part of what we would roll out initially here. Would be interested in beta testing as well. Okay, great. Well, I'll make sure we record all of those notes. Let me see if there are any other questions. So how will workflow instances be related to accreditation criteria? Great, that's a great question. So right now, if you're a Qualtrax customer, the workflow instances you create, there isn't necessarily a record in the tree or a document that is something you can export the same way a document can be exported. You can run reports if need be for this information, but this is also something we think maybe the form filler will come into play down the line into next year, where you have a template for that workflow that will be populated from fields from the workflow. That's if you need a Word version or some PDF output of a workflow. However, right now how we're approaching it is you run a report or a search that has just the data from that one instance, and that's what you're attaching. So the output of that, which is Excel, XLS or CSV file format. A very good question. Let me see here. So a question, we're a Qualtrax customer. Will the bookmarking documents to the standards be part of a Qualtrax revision, or would this step be an extra step to be done in the portal? So right now, the bookmarking to standards would be part of your revision process and just creating, let's say it's the quality manual, and you need bookmarks to dozens of different locations in that document. As you build that, most likely in Word, you're going to be using bookmarks, so that would need to be part of the revision process of that document. You can have the Qualtrax system automatically create a PDF view into that. that will retain those bookmarks, and that's part of that new technology I mentioned earlier that we released this year. And then as you incorporate that into the portal, it will scan and recognize those bookmarks and then work from those. So I guess to answer your question, it will have to be something that you, as a creator of the documentation, build into your documents. You will need to build the bookmarks in. And again, we do have some how-to, very straightforward, simple help documentation around this, but the portal will recognize those and let you specify which area to make the link to. So hopefully I answered that question there. Let's see. So the questions about who to contact for beta, I've got my email. Did I not put my email address? There we go. Sorry. There's my email address. Please send me a note if you'd like to be part of this beta phase. We are very open to getting all types of different labs involved here, making sure we can make this as good as possible for everyone. So the next question, what other personnel information can be included other than name, title, and qualifications? So this, right now, the type of information that we're asking for is identical to what you're doing today during an assessment. And I'd have to go back to the paperwork we're trying to replicate here to answer this more precisely. It really should be no different. And you know, off the top of my head, I can think of the disciplines that you're trained in, the areas that you're proficiency tested in other words. All that information is asked of for each person. And then, of course, how many staff members the lab overall has in each one of those categories. But it really should be no different. And the screenshot we're showing here were just little snippets of the overall workflow process. So they're not necessarily representative of all you'll be asked for. There's a whole lot more that you'll be providing inputs for as you work through the application and the overall accreditation process. So let's see here. So there's a question here. If our lab were to volunteer for beta testing, would Qualtrax be willing to provide setup for free use of the cloud? I can think of a few ways that would work, and I think that would be something we would just like to talk a little more about offline. That's an interesting question. I've not had that one before, so I think it would be one, David, that we can talk about after this call. Will the assessors be required to learn how to navigate in Qualtrax? The assessors will. So the assessment team for ASCLD Lab will get some training on this topic, and this is another component of Qualtrax where we can, as soon as somebody's added to the assessment team, they can get sent a list of the trainings they need to complete to take part in the assessment. That should be no different than what happens today. It'll just take place through the portal. But the assessors will be given an overview of the portal, the steps they'll be required to interact with, and each step hopefully should be very clear and straightforward in terms of what it's asking for. But the navigation side of Qualtrax is something we're focusing heavily on in development to make that very straightforward and simplified for all users, not just the labs. So from my perspective, they will have some training and they will be required to learn how to use it, but that effort should be minimal and really negligible in the grand scheme of things. So that is the last of the overall questions. Let me go ahead and unmute all, and I would please ask when I do this, if you can mute your phones. If you've been on calls like this, you can imagine how loud it will get otherwise, so please, if you can, just mute in the meantime if you don't have a question. Otherwise, I'll open the floor up to general questions. Make sure I'm getting everyone here.
I should have done like 48 minutes.
45 minutes ago.
So I am unmuting everyone, and as you can hear, there's a little feedback. So again, please mute your conference lines.
It has a serious impact on Jason.
But it is open to questions if anyone has any.
Once we get there, what our system looks like, how it operates. We can't just let Jason know everything, otherwise we're going to get to the point where he'll blackmail us and make us
So are there any questions from the audience here?
all our data and everything.
And I've just now got everyone unmuted, so sorry if you were trying to speak earlier.
And you all can raise your hand. There's a little button to raise your hand. You all can raise your hand.
Okay, well, I don't see any further questions, but of course my email's here, and we are